Good morning. We're going to begin the program now. Please continue to serve yourselves, but turn your cell phones to silent mode. My name is Ben Dupuy. I'm a member of the BGR Board of Directors and chair of our Breakfast Briefing Committee. I'm pleased to welcome you to BGR's final breakfast briefing of the year, sponsored by First Horizon Bank. I want to extend our gratitude to WWNO New Orleans Public Radio, which will rebroadcast this event on Tuesday, September 23rd at 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. Following the program, please share your feedback about this event. There are survey forms at your seats that you can complete and give to us, or you can scan the QR code to take the survey on your phone. These surveys help us improve our breakfast briefings so they are as relevant and informative as possible. Later in the program, we'll share that code on the screen, or you may refer to the instructions. The best way to connect with BGR's work is to become a member. BGR members are partners in advancing accountability and constructive solutions for our local government. If you're not a member, now's the time to join. You'll find membership forms at your seats, or you can visit bgr.org to sign up. Together, we can ensure that Greater New Orleans has the effective government we all deserve. We also encourage you to follow BGR on social media at BGR NOLA. Well, that's it, BGR NOLA. All right, and with that, I want to introduce our Executive Director, CEO, President, Becky Mowbray.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Ben. I'd like to express our gratitude to First Horizon Bank for its generous sponsorship of the BGR Breakfast Briefing Series again this year. First Horizon's support is what allows BGR to make these events free to the public. So it is wonderful to see everyone this morning. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and join us here this morning. And it's wonderful to see so many old friends and new in the crowd. And thank you also to those who are joining us via the live stream today. My name is Becky Mowbray, and I serve as BGR's President and CEO. BGR produces research reports that identify solutions to some of the most complex challenges facing local government in Orleans, Jefferson, and St. Tammany parishes. Our work enhances government accountability. We also help inform voters with independent, nonpartisan analysis of important local ballot propositions. This fall, watch for ballot reports about the proposed bond issue, $500 million in Orleans Parish, and the proposed charter change about the independence of the city attorney. Since the June breakfast briefing, BGR has released a few new reports. In advance of the October 11th primary, we conducted a candidate survey asking the candidates for mayor, city council, and sheriff how they will address important public policy issues if elected. We hope that the candidate Q&As will help set the agenda for engagement on major issues facing the city, help educate candidates about BGR's findings and recommendations on vital topics, and help voters make informed choices on Election Day. And last week, we released a short report heading into budget season, calling upon the city to come up with a budget that reflects the true costs of running the city and paid for with recurring revenues, only with recurring revenues. This BGR Now also urges the city to adopt a formal policy to protect its reserves and create a 5-year financial plan for the city. We believe these steps are vital to funding the services that citizens demand on a sustained basis and keep those services going in the event of a crisis and stop burdening future residents with yesterday's expenses. We encourage you to access our candidate Q&As, the BGR Now on the city budget, and other reports and interactive dashboards on our website, bgr.org. So our breakfast briefings advance our mission by allowing citizens to hear directly from government officials and experts on vital public policy issues. You can find the video replays of this breakfast briefing and other events at bgr.org. Today's briefing will focus on rising property insurance costs in Louisiana, the driving factors, and how we can address them going forward. Insurance premiums in New Orleans have risen dramatically due to higher costs caused by more frequent and severe natural disasters, increased risk and claims, and fewer insurers selling policies in the market. On average, home insurance rates throughout the state have risen by about 12% each year in the past 3 years. Meanwhile, a dozen thinly capitalized property insurance companies collapsed after hurricanes Laura, Delta, Zeta, and Ida in 2020 and 2021. These failures raise questions about how prepared insurers are to pay claims in the event of a disaster and cast tens of thousands of homeowners into the State Guarantee Fund. All the while, Louisiana Citizens Property Insurance Corp., the state-sponsored insurer of last resort, is growing because property owners are unable to find coverage in the private market. This rising cost and lack of availability of insurance are commonly cited as reasons why residents are leaving Louisiana, particularly in the New Orleans area, an issue that is of concern to us all. In the last 2 years, the state has implemented reforms it hopes will help mitigate rising costs, such as expanding the fortified roof program. But there are also differences of opinion in Baton Rouge about whether to give insurers more flexibility to respond to changes in the market or whether to get tough with them. And as a result, Louisiana may be sending mixed signals about where it's going with its legislation. Separately, Louisiana has also taken some steps toward tort reform in recent years in hopes of improving the auto insurance market, which is also among the most expensive in the nation. Here today to help to delve deeper into this topic is Louisiana Commissioner of Insurance, Tim Temple. As the state's top insurance official since 2024, Tim is dedicated to protecting the interests of policyholders while promoting a competitive insurance market that benefits all Louisiana residents and businesses. Tim also serves in several leadership positions with the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. Previously, he served as president of Temptan, a family-owned investment management business in Baton Rouge. At the conclusion of today's presentation, we'll be taking questions from the audience. To submit a question, please use your phone to scan the QR code on the screen or the printed instructions at your seat. This will take you to an online form at bgr.org/QA where you can type in your question. That question will come directly to my iPad here, up front here. Please include your name if you'd like to be identified. So I'd like to also note that the views expressed this morning in this program are those of our speaker. Please join me in welcoming Tim Temple.
Good morning. Does this work? Is that good enough? Y'all can hear me great. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, and I'd like to thank Ben and First Horizon for sponsoring this event. The road to relief. Insurance premiums. You know, last week I was in North Louisiana. I was in Ruston speaking to the chamber up there, and at the end of the presentation, we'd allotted like 10 minutes, 15 minutes for questions, and I didn't get one. I did such a great job laying out everything, so I don't think I'm going to be that effective this morning, but I certainly do welcome questions. I encourage questions. I think it's really a good way to have some open dialogue and really understand more of what is important to you. But I'll do my best to make sure we don't have any questions to ask. But starting this presentation, you know, one of the things, we all know the crisis that we're facing. It is an insurance crisis that doesn't just impact property. It doesn't just impact auto. It doesn't just impact workers' compensation or health care. It's all of the above. And it is the worst insurance crisis our state has ever faced. If any of you know people in the industry, and if you know people that have been in it in 40 and 50 years, and there are veterans that have been in it that long, they will tell you this is the worst crisis our state's ever faced. And so with that, when I came into office in January of 2024, you know, it was with a mandate to address this crisis. But before we get into some of the things that we've done last year and this year and what we're going to continue to work on, I think it's important to talk about what is insurance. Because a lot of people have we've kind of gotten away from what the product actually is. It's a promise. It's not a pitch. It's a promise to pay claims when you have them. It's not some jingle that we see on TV and just get happy about and want to buy it. But we've gotten away from that. It's a promise. It's a transfer of your financial risk to a company in exchange for premium. And that premium is based on things like the limit you're buying, the physical risk, where is it located, whether it's a vehicle or a building, what types of perils is it exposed to, what's the regulatory environment, what's the legal environment, what is the term of the policy. Those are all factors that go into the premium. That's what insurance is. What insurance is also, it's an industry into itself in our state. Employs tens of thousands of people. The Department of Insurance, we collect this year, I think we're going to collect $1.4 billion in premium tax. About half of that is from healthcare premiums, the other half is from property and casualty. Millions of dollars in commissions paid, millions of dollars, billions of dollars in taxes paid, as I mentioned. The insurance industry holds billions of dollars of Louisiana bonds. So just like oil and gas and manufacturing and agriculture, everything else that we talk about in our state, insurance in our state, like other states, is an industry by itself. Let's talk about what insurance is not. It's not a maintenance policy for your home. I talk to people all the time and they'll say, yeah, I know my neighbor had a 25-year roof, 30-year roof, should have replaced it year after year after year, but what did they do? They waited. What did they wait for? An event, a storm. They wanted the insurance company to replace their roof. And guess who pays for that? You do. Your neighbor does. Your family members, your colleagues. It's not a maintenance policy. It's also not an investment policy. I hear and see on social media these consumer advocacy groups that say things like, if you haven't used your insurance policy in a year, you may have lost money. Sometimes it takes years and months before you ever see that premium back. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would take the position you don't ever want to see that back. Because if it does, that means you've had a claim. You may have been in a car wreck. You may have had your house, maybe a kitchen fire, a water leak, wind event. You went to a doctor, you got a bad diagnosis. You were at work, you slipped and fell. You don't want to see that money come back to you because that means something bad happened. But when it does happen, we want to make sure that the industry responds properly. They're there quickly, they adjust your claim fairly, and they pay you timely. And that's part of the Department of Insurance, our charge, is to make sure and regulate and hold insurance companies accountable. But it's not an investment policy. It's not a savings account. So with that, last year, at the beginning of session, we focused on a package of bills that was primarily, again, focused on the property crisis. That's what the legislative leadership, the legislators, that's what they really wanted to push, and that's what we at the department, that's what we heard. We need to focus on that. So with that, we presented a package of bills that was designed to address some of the regulatory challenges that insurance companies face in Louisiana, some of the legal challenges that they face. We also did some consumer protection to hold insurance companies more accountable. And we made some substantial changes, and we're starting to see the fruit of that. Since the beginning of 2024, we've had a dozen companies come back to Louisiana, either come back to Louisiana or totally new companies. But just as importantly, we've had companies that were already doing business add more capacity to the state, both in the admitted market and the surplus lines. And I had one particular syndicate that they allocated over $200 million more capacity last year in the commercial space because of the reforms that we were in the process of doing. So it makes a difference. And that's something else it's important to talk about is Louisiana competes for insurance company capacity. No companies have to do business in the state of Louisiana, but for Louisiana citizens and Louisiana's Workers' Compensation Corporation. But everybody else, they choose to put their capital at risk. And when they put their capital at risk, it's hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. So we compete against Texas and Mississippi and Alabama and California and New York. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we had several commissioners. I had 5 commissioners in Baton Rouge for a conference that we were hosting. The commissioners of Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, and Arkansas. And we're all friends, and we serve at NAIC on committees together. And next week, I'm supposed to be in Arkansas at the Arkansas Commissioners event. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be in Alabama for an event there. So we know each other, we like each other, but we compete against each other. I want insurance companies doing more business in my state than their state. And so I have to look at it, again, from that regulatory framework and also from the legal framework. And so last session, I said, again, you know, we passed some legislation primarily focused on property. We're beginning to see the fruits of that. Companies that are taking rate increase are taking less rate increase. It's almost where for the year, as of last month, the average statewide rate increase was 1.8%. So I know some people get more, some people are seeing decreases. We've also had over 8 times now companies have taken rate decrease this year. But that increased trend is coming down. Last year it was 6.6% on average. The year before that, I think it was 12%. The year before that, it was 16%. So we're trending downward on rate increases. We're making a difference. Competition is working. People are starting to see premium relief. Again, it's not everywhere. It's not across the entire state, but it is starting to work, and I anticipate that we'll continue to see that. This past session, it was a physical session. I was at an event a couple weeks ago, and they said that, you know, they introduced me as the guy who hijacked the physical session and made it an insurance session. No, it was not. We had a lot of legislation on insurance, but I still think that we need to have a special session to truly deal with all of the issues on insurance. But nonetheless, we had a good run. We made a good effort to address insurance reform, legal reform. I know it's referred to as tort reform. Most people out there, despite the fact that we have a lot of lawyers in our state, most people don't know what tort is. So I think legal reform is the best way to try and help our fellow citizens understand what we're talking about. But again, it was designed to address some of the issues our state faces and some of the issues insurance companies face. And one of the things that came out of that session, that led to that session, the reform that we attempted, was at the end of July in 2024, after the June sine die, the legislature, the leadership of the legislature decided to hold a series of hearings to talk about insurance. The House Insurance Committee, the Senate Insurance Committee, House Civil Law, and Senate Judiciary A collectively held 14 sessions, 14 meetings. The first one lasted almost 10 hours. But over those 14 hearings that we had, we started talking about cost drivers. Why is a claim more expensive in Louisiana than it is in Texas or Mississippi or Arkansas or Alabama or any other state? And so we started getting into that, and we started looking at some hard data. And in Louisiana, despite the fact that we've got these terrible roads and all these other factors that I hear contribute to auto losses, we don't have more accidents than the national average. We're actually right in line, just slightly a tick over the national average, but we're in line with the number of accidents on the road. Our vehicles, when they are damaged, they don't cost any more to repair in Louisiana than they do in our neighboring states. So our F-150 or our Toyota Camrys, they're not more expensive to repair. We're not outliers there. Where we noticed that we were outliers is when we get in an accident, we file twice the number of bodily injury claims. Twice. On average, 64,000 claims a year for the last 10 years. And when we file those bodily injury claims, we litigate at 3 times the national average. Those are the cost drivers in the state of Louisiana. To put it in perspective, we were looking at states, and I was using the 2020 population chart, but we went and started saying, let's look at licensed drivers. And in Louisiana, we have, I think it was right at we have 2.4 million licensed drivers in the state. Wanted to compare it to a regional state, so Mississippi doesn't really count. They have, I think it was less than right at 1 million licensed drivers. Texas, way too big, it would skew the numbers. So we looked at Alabama. Alabama's comparable, economy's comparable, a population is 500,000 more people, and they have 500,000 more drivers, actually. But using Alabama, and 2021 was the last year that we have data where I say the books are closed, and we should have 2022 shortly within the next month or two, and we'll talk about that data once it becomes public. But in 2021, Louisiana had 66,000 bodily injury claims filed with those 2.4 million drivers. Alabama, with 3 million drivers, 34,000 bodily injury claims. They had 500,000 more drivers and half as few bodily injury claims filed. And I tell people all the time, if Louisiana wants to see premiums, and specifically we're talking about auto right now, if they want to see auto premiums like our neighboring states, then we need to get our claims down to what those neighboring states experience. And so we looked at these cost drivers, and the legislation that we presented and we pushed for this year was designed to reduce that frivolous claims being filed, the excessive claims being filed. Trying to get it we need to go down from 66 or 64 down to somewhere that's closer to what other states see with comparable demographics. And so, two major bills that were passed, and I think will have the biggest impact. I think the biggest of those was a bill by Representative Emily Chenevert, and it was modified comparative fault. And prior to this bill being passed, the law of the land was I could be at fault for getting in an accident with you, sue you, win, and collect. Now, some people say, okay, well, that's a judiciary problem. Well, guess what? Most of these claims never they don't get heard. But that was a problem. So Louisiana, and again, Representative Chenevert passed, authored this legislation. We got it passed. The governor signed it. And now, if you're found at being more than 51% at fault, then you can't collect. Common sense. We joined 33 other states, I believe, that have that law or a very similar law to it. Another bill, it was called the Housley presumption. It was one that was attempted last year, and effectively it says that if you're in an auto accident and you claim that your injury was a result of the auto accident, then you have to prove that the injury was a result of the auto accident before it was presumed to be the cause. One other bill, and this one gets talked about a lot. I don't know what the impact's going to be at the end of the day, but we have a lot of uninsured drivers in Louisiana, and I've always maintained that we don't, because the data shows that we're actually right below the national average of uninsured drivers. But nonetheless, some legislation was brought that said that and we currently have a no pay, no play law that says if you don't carry insurance and you're involved in an accident, it's not your fault, you litigate, or you can't recover the first minimum limits, $15,000 for FISDAM, and then I think it's $20,000 for bodily injury, whatever that number is. But anything above that you can collect. Well, this law changed it and says, well, you can't recover the first $100,000. It's a movement in the right direction, but of the states, and I think there are 13 other states that have a similar bill that says if you're driving and you don't have insurance and you get in a wreck, then you just can't collect, period. So Louisiana's not there. We probably need to keep moving in that direction if we truly want to see that to start to have an impact on some of this excessive and somewhat sometimes frivolous claims that are being filed. But we started moving in that direction. We also passed some legislation that says insurance companies now have to give you 60 days notice for non-renewal instead of 30 days. We passed some legislation, and I say we, I'm not a legislator, I can only ask legislators to carry bills, but the legislature passed legislation that says insurance companies now have to make part of the renewal process what your expiring premium is, so that you can compare that to what the renewal quote is. A lot of times people don't have the expiring number. If they think about it, they might remember what it is, but it's not right there in front of you. It's not on a piece of paper. going forward, insurance companies, and I think that starts in January 27, insurance companies will have to also show what the expiring premium is versus the renewal so that you can do a little quick comparison. We also, the legislature passed legislation that shows that the premium distribution has to be showed. So, for that dollar of premium you pay, they have to show that whatever, X percent is for taxes, X percent is for commission, X percent is for contingent profit, the portion that goes to surplus, whatever. They have to do a little pie chart, if you will, however they want to represent it, but I think a pie chart is I think we put that in the legislation. So that now you get to see how that dollar is being handled by the insurance company. Transparency, I think it's important. So we're trying to do some things to help protect the consumers, give them more awareness. You may have heard me say before, be insurance ready. I think that's one of the things that we as a consumer of insurance need to do more of, is understand that policy, what it covers, what it doesn't cover. I maintain if you know what's covered and what's not covered, you're going to have a better claims outcome. You're going to have a better claims experience. And look, I tell this story just recently. I had a water heater leak in my house. And even though I go out there and say be insurance ready, I thought I had just a set dollar amount for my deductible, my all other perils deductible. It wasn't. It was a percentage. So even I can be at fault for having not understood every detail of my policy. But I encourage people to go and sit down and read your policy. And if after you've done that, schedule a meeting with your agent and go over it again and understand everything that you can possibly, consume about your policy so that you know what's covered and what's not covered. And that way you're in a better position to hold your insurance company accountable when you have a claim. And at the end of the day, you can always call the Department of Insurance, and we're there to help. Some other legislation that they passed this year, many of you may have heard about the Fortified Roof Program. We just did another grant, another round of grants, another 500. I think we had 45, just a little under 4,600 people applied for those 500, in addition to the 10,000 that were already in the bucket, if you will. The Fortified Roof Program is the long-term solution to more affordable insurance in Louisiana. It's the long-term solution to attract more companies to want to come and write property in Louisiana. The last 2 years, the Department of Insurance has had to go to the legislature and ask for money to fund the Fortified Roof Program. This year, I had asked the legislature to pass the law that would allocate, that we created two funding sources, if you will. One portion is the tax that is collected on insurance. We didn't raise the tax. All we did was ask that the legislature dedicate a portion of the premium tax already collected in property to fund this program permanently. The other funding stream was we increased the fees on the insurance industry, on insurance companies, insurance agents, insurance adjusters, the industry, the men, women, the businesses that we license. We increase their fees. I think it was $7 a year. But from those two streams, we will now have somewhere between $27 and $30 million each year to fund the Fortified Roof Program. So we don't have to go and ask the legislature. And in times when the legislature is flush with cash, they'll probably be more generous. But when times are tough, then they might not fund it at all. So it created some predictability and stability in the funding of that program. Let's see, we also, and if you don't know, there's currently a tax deduction. If you choose to put a fortified roof on yourself, prior to this year, you could claim up to $5,000 tax deduction. The legislature increased that to $10,000. So you can now claim up to $10,000 tax deduction. They also passed legislation this year that created a tax credit. So you can claim, and I think it's the same, I think you can claim up to $10,000, it may be $5,000, but I think it's 10, up to $10,000 tax credit if you choose to put a fortified roof on yourself. Now that program's capped at $1 million this year, so once they've allocated $1 million worth of credits, then that program closes. I'd like to see them, continue that program next year and hopefully increase it. But there's incentive for people to choose to get to get fortified roofs if they want to. And to show you the numbers, the fortified roof program next month will have been in effect for 2 years. As of the end of last month, we had 3,800 fortified roofs on in Louisiana. Those are roofs on. There, people getting discounts from their insurance companies as a result of those roofs. We also have over 5,500 roofs that people chose to fortify themselves, pay for it themselves, get a tax credit or get a tax deduction, and also get that discount on their homeowner's insurance. And so it works. Like I said, this program's not even 2 years old. And just to give you some numbers, Alabama, who's been doing this for 12 years, they have right around 7,000 fortified roofs through their grant program. That's after 12 years versus our nearly 4,000 after 23 months. And the trend is going to continue that way for Louisiana. Those where they've really excelled are the homes that people chose to fortify. And they did that. They have, I think it's north of 50,000 fortified roofs that people chose to put on. And it works. Several years ago, Alabama was impacted with Hurricane Sally, Category 2 storm, but nonetheless a hurricane. 17,000 fortified roofs were exposed to those hurricane-force winds. Less than 3% of those roofs filed a claim. So it works. The shingles stay on, the contents stay dry. You're able to get back in your house quicker. If all it takes is utilities being turned on after that at that point. And so the program works. It's very effective. We need to continue that. The other thing is the building codes in Louisiana. After Hurricane Katrina and Rita, the Louisiana legislature changed and adopted a statewide building code process. And Louisiana is one of the early adopters. Every 3 years, the International Code Council updates the building codes to reflect the latest or most recent building materials used and construction methods. And Louisiana is always an early adopter of that. Where we fall behind is on the enforcement of it. Our inspection process is not as robust as it needs to be. And so we're talking with the Louisiana Building Code Council. We're talking with the group that works with inspectors. We need to bring more uniformity to that. We need to bring more enforcement. I was recently in the upper Ninth Ward and talking to some roofers and some people that have helped folks get a fortified roof there. And I asked the gentleman that was in charge of it, and I said, well, tell me, when you're pulling roofs off, what do you see? And he's like, we see roofs where there's no decking at all. It's just felt. He said, we see some really bad roofs when we pull these things off. And so we need better enforcement. Look, I'm a less government, not more government, but this is something that if we truly, as a state, want to see a better and more competitive property market, then we've got to enforce the building codes that we have on the books. There's a wind mitigation survey out there. If any of you have never heard of it, then please go to the department's website and look up or just Google wind mitigation survey. Those building codes I mentioned that Louisiana adopted back in 2006, 2007, there are construction designs in your home that you may not be aware of. And the building codes require that now. The way your roof is attached to your frame, the way the frame's attached to the foundation. There are things that your home probably has, that you're not aware of. But you go and you get a wind mitigation survey. It costs, I think, on average $300. And a surveyor comes out, they look at your home, they crawl in your attic if they need to, but they look to see what some of these designs that your home may have. And then you get that survey from them. You take it to your insurance company, and there are discounts that insurance companies have for this that you can benefit from. A couple of weeks ago, Newell Norman was on the radio program, and he was talking, and he said that he had finally gone and gotten one done. $2,800, just right off the top. It's real money. I mean, it's there. A lot of homes have it. A lot of just homeowners don't know that they have these things. So I encourage people to go get a wind mitigation survey. Another thing that I've undertaken since I became commissioner is, we pay attention to, this city, the state, and the federal government spent billions of dollars on flood mitigation. You've built armored levees. You've built massive pump stations. You've done things to help mitigate against future floods. I think a lot of people in the city know it. Some people in the state know it. Maybe a few at the federal government know it. But not a lot in the insurance industry are aware of this. So one of the things that I undertook, and we just last week had our third visit, where I'm bringing in reinsurance companies, underwriters, and we're showing them these pump stations. We're showing them the surge barrier. If you've never seen that surge barrier, 1.8 miles long, 26 feet tall, it's out there in the middle of the marsh, and it's designed to protect this city from storm surge. And it's real, it's there. The city, the residents should get credit for this stuff. But you can't get credit if the insurance industry doesn't know about it. And so last week I think we had about a dozen people in our group that were from the insurance industry, 6 of them from London, reinsurance underwriters, immensely impressed. And I want them to know that so that they can factor that into their rating when they write. And we're not talking about, some of them do write flood. There is some private flood in Louisiana, but I'm really talking about when you have marsh restoration, when you knock the wind speed down because of projects like this, then it's less damage to the property structure. So there's a benefit by having these men and women come out and look at that. So we've been introducing that. Interestingly enough, one of the things that we talked about and we had not talked about was that, and you see this a lot, when Sewage and Water Board, when they do these water boils, who goes out of business? Or who has to shut down? Restaurants. Business interruption. That's one of the things that they factor into their pricing, and so we're going to start working with them to help them, and I know Sewage and Water Board is about to bring on a new power generation unit, which will bring more predictability and stability to that. So we're going to work with the industry to make sure that they understand what's going on there, so that you get the proper credit, that hopefully we can see a reduction in the pricing for things like business interruption. It's little things like that add up that make dollars. It's, pennies make nickels, nickels make dimes, dimes quarters, and quarters dollars. And that's what we want to try and do with the insurance industry. So I know we're going to take some questions. One quick thing I wanted to mention too was there was a bill that was passed, very controversial. It started off as House Bill 576. It became House Bill 148. It's now Act 11. Call it the Commissioner's Bill, the Authority Bill, the Magic Wand Bill, but effectively said the Commissioner now has the authority to deny excessive rates because I feel like it. Don't have to use actuarial justification anymore. Just get to use subjective terms like feelings and want. It's a bad bill. I spend more time talking with insurance companies about how they're going to be, just like any other business, they want predictability and they want stability. This introduced an unpredictable, unstable regulatory environment. We're now more liberal in rating than California is, and California was by far the most liberal. So anyway, I'm spending a lot of time with insurance companies talking about that. It's a bad bill. Hopefully we can modify it next session. So with that, I'm happy to take questions, and thank you all for letting me be here, and we'll continue to work to bring insurance premium relief to everybody in the state. So do you want me to sit there? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tim. That was a great presentation. And I will also add on the wind mitigation discount. I filed one last year. I spent $300 and I got $4,200 off of my homeowners. So just throwing that in there.
Can we get you on a commercial one?
No, but okay. So we've had a lot of questions coming in online. I'm going to start with 3 of them that came in early from some of our BGR members. The first one, and I'm not sure I completely understand the context of this, but please comment on the sandbox program. What do you hope to achieve? And why is it needed?
Is this on?
Yes.
Yep. So last year we had Representative Kim Carver from the North Shore authored legislation that created, it's called Sandbox, and it's simply another tool that insurance industry will have if they want to come and try and do some type of insurance innovation. Again, because of the regulatory hurdles that Louisiana presented to the industry, we're one of the last states that insurance companies bring and new policy innovation, new insurance innovation to the state. So we asked Representative Carver to author this. He did, and it simply allows an insurance company, if they want to introduce a new product, think of it as like a pilot program. It it relaxes some of the regulatory hurdles to introduce a new product. There's still consumer protection there. The department would be very engaged in overseeing, making sure that consumers are protected, and that a company's not selling a product that there's not really coverage for. We would ensure that didn't take place. There's things with regards to rate and how that's filed, but it was designed to help incentivize companies to come and try new products in our state on a faster track, if you will.
Terrific. How are prospective first-time home buyers in the New Orleans area supposed to commit to staying here when insurance costs for even a very modest home can easily be quoted at $6,000 a year? How long is it going to take for homeowners insurance rates to come down so that housing is more affordable for the average person?
Well, I speak to realtor groups a lot around the state, and insurance has certainly impacted that business. But I think it highlights that insurance impacts every business. You can't drive a car, you can't operate a business without insurance. I mean, you can't do anything. I mean, everything, the people that made the chairs, that built this building, that turned the lights on, that pay workers' comp, I mean, everything has an insurance factor into it, and real estate is certainly one of them. I hear it all the time. People are leaving our state because they can't afford their homeowners insurance. They can't afford their auto insurance. They can't afford their commercial auto insurance. All of it. And so it highlights the importance of organizations, and specifically to realtors. We're trying to get that association to engage with us and help promote additional insurance reform. So it's something that I'm concerned about. I certainly understand that if first-time home buyers, heck, I mean, we all know if you lived in your home 20 years, 30 years, you still got the same challenges. How do you budget for a product that is fluctuating like it is? Florida tackled insurance reform in 2021 and 22. They had 4 special sessions after one hurricane, Hurricane Ian. It turned their insurance market on its ear, like we experienced here after Laura, Delta, Zeta, and Ida. 4 special sessions in that 12-month period. It took them about 24 months, 18 to 24 months, before they started seeing companies come back to Florida, new companies go into Florida, additional capital go into Florida. I think the last time I talked to the Commissioner of Insurance there, Mike Jaworski, they had 24 or 30 new companies doing business in Florida. They have over $1 billion in new investment in the homeowners market there. Rates started coming down for the first time in years in Florida in 2020, at the end of 24 and now into 25 because of the reform. It took 2 years. We're starting to see that a little quicker in Louisiana. I don't think because we did anything more special than Florida did. I think that we're seeing the benefits of that sooner, as that Florida's reform was tested by 2 hurricanes last year, and some of that reform we have, and some of those protections we have in Louisiana. So I think we're getting a little credit. That's my personal belief, is that we're starting to see that. So it does take time. As people have heard me say, we didn't get in this crisis overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight, but we are going to get out of it. We are trending in the right direction. So it's not fast, but it is starting to work.
Great. As you may be aware, Tim, there are municipal elections in New Orleans this fall, and many of the candidates for mayor and council are raising concerns about the high cost of housing, including the cost of insurance. Many are eager to take initiatives at the local level, and so we have the question, what are some of the initiatives that local governments and their leaders can take to help alleviate the insurance issue?
Well, look, one of the things, there are other parishes that have really pushed this inspection process to ensure building codes are maintained or adhered to. Look, St. Charles Parish, I think, has been doing this for years under President Matt Jewell. That's one of the things. They have probably the most comprehensive state or parish-wide database of roofs, a roof registry, if you will, in their state or in their parish. That's important. Insurance companies want to see that. So I think that being engaged and making sure that the local, not the local, it's a statewide, codes are enforced is important. I think y'all just saw yesterday, and you're hearing more about it today, that Jefferson Parish, they did they got their class 3 on their flood map ratings. Their residents are going to see a 35% reduction in flood insurance premium across the parish there. Fortified roof program. We have a program with Jefferson Parish, and we are working with them. They've allocated money to build fortified roofs. What we're doing is, through our program, if you get a grant in Jefferson Parish, and through the grant program, you can receive up to $10,000. Well, some roofs cost more than $10,000. So that means people just say, can't do it. I don't have the extra $2,000 or $4,000 or whatever the gap is. Jefferson Parish is saying, we'll help fund the gap. So it helps our dollars go further. It helps Jefferson Parish's dollars go forward. I think it's something Orleans needs to look at and try and help more fortified roofs. Fortified roofs is the long-term solution. It's also the quickest way to get a reduction. And I didn't say this before. Every admitted carrier in the state has a filed discount on a fortified roof. So you put a fortified roof on, you will get a discount if you're with an admitted carrier. Some are larger than others. Some are single digits. Some are almost 50%. So again, real money.
Great. We have several questions related to the announcement in Jefferson Parish about flood insurance rates. What is the outlook for risk rating, FEMA's risk rating 2.0, and the latest system for calculating flood insurance premiums for everybody else who's not in that lucky zone in Jefferson Parish that just had the improvement?
Yeah, look, obviously that's a federal issue. I don't know who's qualified to talk about that. That's been a long time, slow-moving train wreck. Risk rating 2.0. I know our congressional delegation has been fighting and pushing for reform and change there. At the department, we have chimed in and weighed in that we need a different system. Quite frankly, that's what scares me when people talk about creating some type of federal reinsurance program. What federal insurance program works well right now? It's not NFIP. We'll continue to advocate for a flood program that works, but at the end of the day, I'd like to see more private flood. We need to continue to make changes to create a marketplace where private flood can thrive. I talk to people all the time, and I see rates that private flood is about 30% less expensive than the NFIP program. You can get higher rates or higher limits. You can get additional living expense. It's a benefit-rich policy, and so I don't want to focus. I can't really impact the NFIP, but I can help promote private flood, and so we're going to continue to do that, and hopefully the feds can figure out how to make that work.
How big is private flood at this point in Louisiana?
It's I think collectively less than 10,000 policies are in effect in Louisiana, but that's grown over the last several years, and I think it's going to continue to accelerate as again, we create a regulatory and legal environment where insurance companies can thrive, and we're actively promoting more private flood to come into the state.
We have several questions related to fortified homes, and I'll pick one of them. Why are some insurance companies not offering fortified discounts, and others are offering discounts of up to 30%? Is there anything you can do to benchmark the discounts like they do in coastal Alabama? It seems to be working there, where rates at the beach tend to be about half of the rates in New Orleans.
Yeah, so every admitted company has a filed discount with the Department of Insurance. By law, they have to. Surplus lines markets, excess markets, don't have to have a filed discount with us, and nor should they. It's an unregulated sector of the industry, and it should remain unregulated. There's been pushback. I know last year and this year there were legislators that wanted to create a mandate to tell companies that they had to offer a 20% mandatory discount. And that's not free market. The thing that I want to highlight is that, I know, look, 2 weeks ago I was in Destrehan speaking to a group, and there was a lady that told me that she had she'd put a fortified roof on herself, and she got I want to say it was a 7 or 10% discount. with her company, the one she was with, the one she wanted to be with. If I had told that company that they had to do a 20% mandatory, if that doesn't work for them actuarially, then what are they going to do? They're not going to write that home. So I don't want to discourage companies from doing business. The Louisiana Legislative Auditor they audited our program, the insurance department's fortified roof program, and they found that on average, people were receiving a 22% discount. So I think the current system works. I also know that as insurance companies get more data, then they can get more aggressive on their discounts. As more fortified roofs go on, the more data they have, the more aggressive they have. And look, Alabama's program, while they did a lot of great things, and Louisiana took a lot of good that they did, and we accelerated it. But they also were very thoughtful on how they applied their program, and their 20%. It's a benchmark. It's not a mandate. But I think the current system Louisiana have is working. I'm open-minded that we might need to, reevaluate it at some point in time. But for now, I think we need to, let it run the course. And at some point in time, if we need to, reevaluate that, we will.
You stated in your remarks that Louisiana is in competition with neighboring states to gain the business of insurance companies. If, in the long run, Louisiana continues to lose out on the business of these companies, what do you see as potential alternative solutions to lowering property insurance premiums in our state?
Well, look, I think it's one of those things where we have to pay attention to our environment, to our marketplace. And, last year and the year before, you've seen these big pushes for some major reform. And I think it's because for years we didn't do anything. And I can tell you, one of the benefits of being the commissioner of insurance is you get to interact with all the other state commissioners. There's 56 of us, 50 in the states, and then 6 territories have insurance commissioners. Their legislatures and their commissioners are working constantly. Every time they go in session, they're always tweaking. They're always trying to better and improve. I've heard feedback already that we've done enough insurance reform in the state of Louisiana and we need to just take our foot off the gas and coast a little bit. Raise your hand if you want us to coast. Raise your hand if you want us to not continue to do reform. Raise your hand if you've seen enough reduction in your premiums. Exactly. So that's what we're competing. Not only is our state competing for insurance capacities, but again, I compete against my commissioners. Our legislators need to be competing against other states to improve our state, our marketplace, again, our environment, so that insurance companies want to do more business in our state. And so we're going to continue to push. There is competition, but I don't think that we need to enhance our current Louisiana citizens. It's a market of last resort. If we take care of our business, companies in the industry will respond positively. They will come to Louisiana. They will want to write your home. They will want to write your auto. They will want to write your business.
We have several legislative outlook sort of questions, so I'll take one of them. Thank you for reviewing what has been done at the legislature to help reduce insurance premium. What bills remain to be passed that can further help lower insurance premiums?
Well, look, I always take issue when people say what bills can pass to lower insurance premiums, because that's not what the legislation should do. The legislation should be focused on creating a competitive environment where that will lower premiums. I mean, when I think of lowering, legislation that lowers, I think of mandates, and that just doesn't work. There were several bills that we looked at this past session that legislators brought, that authored, that never saw the light of day, that we need to have conversations about if the legislative will is going to be there to fight these battles. One was a general damage cap that was talked about. It never got a committee hearing. I don't know if that's a viable solution or not, but I think it's one worthy of having conversations about. That's one thing that I've learned, being in this office, is that you need to have the debate. You need to have the open conversations. And at the end of the day, if it's not the willpower of the legislature or the people of Louisiana to support something, then so be it. Then we move on. But to have these ideas talked about and never have the debate, I don't think I think we're better than that. I think the people of Louisiana deserve to have that. So I don't want to get into specifics on what legislation right now. We're still engaged with a lot of stakeholders on what we need to talk about, but I can tell you that we'll continue to, we'll look, and there's third-party litigation financing is one we probably need to tweak. I think there's more consumer protection bills that we need to look at to help make sure that consumers have the regulatory and legal protections that they need when bad things happen to them. And again, that's one of the things I get to talk to my fellow commissioners and, hey, what did you try in Alabama last year? What did y'all do in Oklahoma? You know, what works, what doesn't work? I say it all the time, I don't want us to be doing experimental legislation. We can't afford that. We need to look at other states and do what's tried, true, and tested and has been verified. So not ready to say exactly what the bills are, but as we get closer to session, we'll be talking more about that.
Can you discuss the risk of non-admitted or surplus lines insurers? And the writer notes many business policies are only available via non-admitted insurers.
Yeah, so non-admitted or excess and surplus lines companies are companies, a lot of them tend to be Lloyd's companies. They are not as heavily regulated as admitted companies. They have an easy thing is freedom of form. It's effectively you, the insured, and the surplus lines company, the insurance company, agree on what your policy terms are. The rating, there's more flexibility in rating. They don't have to file their rates with the department. They're not, we aren't looking at the actuarial justification of it. It's more, they typically flourish in times when the admitted market pulls back from an area because of losses or because of, increased exposure. And they're, I've heard them referred to as the Wild West, but they're also a safety net of sorts. They also tend to write some of your more bigger, your complex risk, your refineries, oil and gas rigs, offshore, manufacturing concerns. So a lot of your more sophisticated buyers use surplus lines. Companies that have CPAs and attorneys and risk managers are oftentimes use surplus lines. But in the current environment, I have seen some surplus lines companies start to write homeowners business. Write small retail businesses. You don't have the protection of the guarantee association. Again, you don't have some of the protections that the department has, but again, that's by design. Louisiana is not unique. Surplus lines, California is a big surplus lines market, Florida is a big surplus lines market, Texas is a big surplus lines market, and Louisiana is as well because of a lot of our coastal exposure. So I would say to the person that posed that, if you have any more thoughts or questions, contact the department. We can provide lots of information on surplus lines, what we do to hold them accountable where we're allowed to, and then where some of the risk might be.
Terrific. How exactly do we attract new carriers to the state outside of things like fortified roofs and not having natural disasters in consecutive years?
I haven't figured out how to not have the natural disasters. Look, 2 million Louisiana citizens live within 50 miles of the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, Gulf Coast. That's almost half our population. That means almost, I would argue, half of our property structures are within 50 miles of the Gulf. So building codes, fortified structures, I mean, that is vital. We've seen, again, it's demonstrated. Alabama, I go to a conference every couple of years down in the Fairhope area. And believe it or not, Alabama, you can buy a very nice home and have very affordable insurance in the coastal Alabama. Why? Because of those 50,000+ fortified roofs I mentioned, or really it's with their grant program, it's probably over 60,000 fortified roofs now. Again, that's the long-term path. You create structures that insurance companies want to insure. I like to reference Bermuda. Bermuda is this tiny island, 40,000 people. Every building, every home now there, they withstand hurricanes, and they get hit by some pretty strong storms. Like they say is, what happens before a hurricane? They go outside, they pick up some sticks, clean up make sure that they don't have any things that's going to become a projectile. They go inside, they close their door, and they wait it out. But they walk outside, their roof is on, their walls are intact, their windows are fine, there's no water inside, and they go about their business. We've got to focus on building more resilient structures in the state of Louisiana. It's just, it's a fact. It's what we need to do. So that, and then again, paying attention to the things that we can influence, not the weather, but the regulatory environment, the legal environment, competing against those other states to make sure that insurance companies want to come and do business here.
Tim, thank you very much. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for questions. I hope we've covered a good range of them to get to some of your issues. Thank you again to First Horizon Bank for its generous sponsorship of this breakfast briefing. Please remember to complete your survey. You can use the QR code to take the survey on your phone or fill out the paper survey form at your seat and hand it to a BGR staff member.
If I can just add one thing.
We really appreciate these surveys because they help us improve these events and make sure we're delivering what you want. A recording of today's breakfast briefing will be available on our website, bgr.org. It will also be rebroadcast on WWNO New Orleans Public Radio on Tuesday, September 23rd at 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. We look forward to seeing you again at future BGR events. Please explore our latest research at bgr.org and follow us on social media. And before you leave, I encourage you to take your next step. Become a BGR member. Your membership fuels our nonpartisan research and makes events like this possible. Please join us today. Together we can shape the government we want for Greater New Orleans. Thank you, Commissioner Temple, for making the trek down from Baton Rouge today. Thank you to all of you for joining us today, and make it a great one. Thanks again.
And if I could, I just want to add one more thing. And look, insurance is the crisis of the state. Despite that, I do think Louisiana's best days are in front of us. I mean, if you look at all of the reform that the legislature and the governor has supported, tax reform, criminal justice reform, revitalizing LED, DOTD, all of these things to help attract other businesses other than insurance, we are on a good trajectory to see our economy soar, I think, better than it ever has. But we've got to make sure that insurance is part of that too. We've got to keep pushing for that. As these businesses want to come and look to do business here, we need to make sure that insurance isn't like this extra burden that they have to assume in our state versus other states. So our best days are still before us. And again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. So God bless you. God bless Louisiana.